Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Juneau Votes Municipal Candidates Debate. My name is Robert Barr, and I work as the director for your public library system, and I'm part of Juneau Votes, which is a nonpartisan, collaborative community project with the goals of increasing voter collaboration, voter turnout, and voter registration. I want to kick us off tonight by talking about why we are here. I think the reason for being here can really be summed up in one word, and that's education. I believe education is the biggest barrier that we face in voting and being involved in civic life. When people choose not to vote, they often do so because they can't convince themselves that their vote matters or that they're well informed enough to make a good choice at the polls. Self-education is the answer to these dilemmas, and if you believe your vote doesn't matter, I would encourage you to think of all the different ways in which our local government has an impact on you. From the streets you drove on to get here tonight, to the water you expect to come out of your taps at home, to our hospital, our airport, our swimming pools, our libraries, our schools, our parks, to our first responders, our emergency medical and response staff, community planning officials, and everyone that serves on one of the largely volunteer boards, commissions, and committees that guide, advise, and direct our local government efforts. All of those people, all of the people involved in those projects are ultimately directed by your assembly members. And it's undeniable that local government has a significant impact on us. If you need even more convincing that your vote matters, you need look no further than to the 6 people running for assembly this year. Each of them believe your votes matter so much that they are offering up a huge amount of their time over the next 3 or more years. There's no glory or fame to be had in being an assembly member, and these folks are running because they know that it matters. Self-education is also the answer to becoming well-informed enough to make a good choice. It's not easy, and like most good things, it takes effort, but we hope tonight's event makes it a little easier for you. You'll have the opportunity to hear our candidates questioned by our local journalists, and at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask your own questions. If you have friends that couldn't make it tonight, I encourage you to encourage them to listen to KTOO tomorrow night at 7 p.m. when this will be rebroadcasted. And we'll also be posting a video on the KTOO and Juneau Empire websites. Our panelists, our journalists tonight, are Lakidra Shevas and Sam DeGrave. Lakidra is from KTOO Public Media, and Sam is representing the Juneau Empire. Lakidra and Sam are both journalists and reporters for our community. Lakidra and Sam, would you take it away and introduce our candidates?
Norton Gregory is the housing manager for the Tlingit-Hyder Regional Housing Authority. He serves as a board member for the Juneau Affordable Housing Commission. Gregory is running for the area-wide assembly seat. Kate Troll worked in the fisheries, coastal management, and energy policy fields for more than 2 decades. She previously served on the Ketchikan Assembly. Troll is the incumbent for the area-wide seat and is running for her 2nd term. May Becker worked as a teacher in Juneau for 30 years. She is the former president of the Association of Alaska School Boards and is the incumbent for District 1. She is running for her 3rd term on the Assembly. Arnold Liebelt is the former senior policy analyst for the Office of Management of the Governor. He serves on the Douglas Advisory Board. Liebelt is running for the District 1 Assembly seat. William Quayle Jr. is an insurance agent. He's taken courses at the University of Alaska Southeast with a focus on communication. Quayle is running for the District 1 Assembly seat as well. Beth Weldon is a retired Division of Chief for the Capital City and Rescue. She sits on the Aquatics Board and will soon be president of the Glacier Valley Rotary. Weldon is running unopposed for the District 2 Assembly seat.
All right, candidates, now here are the rules for the debate. We'll present a question to one candidate. That candidate will have 40 seconds to answer. We'll then ask each of the other candidates, who will also have 40 seconds to answer, the same question. In some cases, we may ask you for more clarification or to expound on your answer. That won't always be the case. Toward the end of the debate, we'll have a lightning round where each candidate will have 10 seconds to answer either yes or no to the questions we ask. Andy Hirsch, here to my left, is our timekeeper. When you have 10 seconds, or well, actually, when you have 5 seconds left, Andy will hold up the orange flag here, and when your time is completely over, she'll ring the bell. Please be respectful of the time. Now on to the questions.
The first question is to Norton. As an assembly member, it will be challenging to tackle all of your goals at once. Instead, you will likely focus on solving the city's core issues over a long period of time. Please list, in order of priority, the top 3 issues the Juneau Assembly should focus on, and briefly explain why.
Thank you, Lakedra. I believe that the top priority for our community is focusing on our economy and making sure that Juneau has a strong and resilient local economy. As we've seen with the state budget, there is a lot of uncertainty with the state and what's happening there, and with the state budget being so heavily reliant on oil. And so I believe that's important that Juneau build up their economy locally. That is going to be my first and top priority. The second priority is going to be housing. When you look at the Juneau Economic Development Plan, the development plan explains that the largest constriction on our local economy is housing. The third is going to be education.
Kate?
Thank you. Could you repeat the question?
As an assembly member, it will be challenging to tackle all of your goals at once. Instead, you will likely focus on solving the city's core issues over a long period of time. Please list, in order of priority, the top 3 issues the Juneau Assembly should focus on, and briefly explain why.
Thank you. I think the first priority should be making sure we get back to a sustainable budget. As we know from Governor Walker, when he met with us, he explained how deficits run downhill, and indeed they have dealt us a blow of a 4.8 million hole. So we're making strides toward filling that, but we also know that more changes are coming our way. So making sure that we have a sustainable budget would be a top priority of mine. Number 2 would be turning the Juneau Economic Plan into jobs. It's a great community blueprint that has a lot of important initiatives. And the third priority would be housing, something I've been working on and will continue to work on.
Mary?
Thank you. Well, mine are similar. My first priority will be to go ahead and balance the budget, which we have done for this year using reserves and carryover. We have to pay back some of that, so it's going to be important not only to balance this year, but also have a plan for how we return the money into our fund balance. And then I would like to make sure, as we do our planning for the education of the school district, we are using money that we've been able to save and put together, and there'll be no question about going to the cap next year. And
Arnold?
The priorities that I've established when I started running this campaign are having a sustainable budget, fully funding education, and create greater housing opportunities across the housing spectrum. And those are still my priorities today. Sustainable budget is very closely related to having solid education and also having solid housing. These are not independent of each other. In fact, these are related to each other. I would like to say that the legislature will pass a sustainable budget plan next year, but if they don't, we really have to prepare for the worst. Always hope for the best, but if that happens, this year may not look so bad. Hopefully we'll be able to do something at the state level. Education is the foundation of a strong community, and I fully support fully funding education. And the demographics have changed for housing, so we need to cater to that.
William?
I offer proactive solutions for like adding water to the city's coffers. Make sure we add money to the city's coffers by selling water, as well as eventually getting it so cruise ships come during the winter. Also, 4 times as many vendors during on the streets of Juneau. We also want to make sure that the seniors' exemptions are reinstated, as well as for the seniors, make sure that
Beth?
I agree. The first thing we need to do is look at the budget, and we got shocked a little bit by what happened from the state, and we need to make sure that we can go forward and pay that back and prepare next time in case that happens again. My second priority would be jobs, and looking at the Juneau Economic Development Plan. One of theirs is to try and make Juneau a research center and bring up some of the jobs from NOAA and the Alaska Fisheries Service coming up to Juneau instead of being down south. And then my last priority would be education. And I've already testified for both the House and Senate Finance Committees this year to support education. I'll continue to do so.
All right, we'll start with Kate for the next question. This year's budget, or the city budget, was impacted heavily by last-minute vetoes from the governor. This resulted in nearly a $5 million deficit for the current fiscal year. As a part of the Assembly's plan to close that budget gap, the Assembly has directed the city to cut about $500,000 from its general government operating budget during the next few months. What should city officials look to cut?
Well, the first thing we're going to go through is what's called a priority budget situation, to where we're going to tap the staff, all of our empowered boards, involve the community, and try to identify our essential services. What's essential to me is not necessarily what everybody else would agree to. So we're going to have community input on those types of matters. In terms of things immediately that I think we can look at is, let's consolidate our parking. We have several departments that deal with parking. Let's put that in one place. Let's look at online payment of taxes and services. So those are a couple of key things, but it really will involve the entire community in making this decision.
All right, Mary?
Thank you. Like Kate, we will have to ballot our budget, and then we're going to be looking at what the public thinks the priorities are in this community. What are the essential services? Our staff is already creating a method by which we can come to the public to get the input. I think that's going to be very valuable. We, of course, will go through our empowered boards, our departments, the Assembly will work on it, and try to put together a good list that will not hurt us. We will continue to keep our quality of life, which I think is very, very important.
Is there anything in particular that you would look to cut?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything in particular that you would look to cut?
Look to cut?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yes, there are some things that we have that may not be necessary. I know last time we went to cut the budget, we were looking very much at the flowers and all that department. That's very expensive to do all the flowers downtown. They're beautiful, I love them. But it's very possible that we can get volunteers to do that. That's just one small place.
Thank you. Arnold?
It's a difficult question to answer, not being an Assembly person right now, because I like to make my decisions based on what the data is showing. What the city manager and Assembly are working on now is a priority-based budgeting system, which I support because it gives an evaluation of the priority based on different criteria for the value of programs and services. But that being said, the one thing that does come to mind is how much the community is spending in lease cost for lease space. I think it was before this library was built and we still had it at the mall. It was about $7 million a year that we were spending in lease space. So that's something that comes to mind, is can we consolidate the amount of space that we're using?
Thank you. William?
Cuts are sort of against my vocabulary. I'd rather add money to the city's coffers rather than cut some. If anything, I would say you got to review the roads that are being worked on. You know, sometimes they redo a road or a construction project that we really don't need, and review those construction projects. Also, make sure that we work on projects that the city has more bang for the buck.
All right, thank you. Beth?
Well, as several of the candidates have already stated, we are looking at prioritizing the budget and seeing what the citizens out there feel is important, so I don't need to talk too much about that. There are a few agencies in the city that we have this similar mission statements, and we could look at consolidating those. I applaud the Assembly already for consolidating the Public Works and Engineering departments. I also have stated that we should look at the Equipment Replacement Fund because we're Juneau and we're special, but we might not need cutting edge for everything, and that might be somewhere where we could trim a little bit off. And the other thing is we can always look at vacancies and don't fill those.
Thank you. Oh, Norton, sorry.
Well, thank you. You know, I agree that it's important that we work with the public and get their feedback on what's important to them. And it's a public process. It's taxpayer money that we're dealing with. And I believe that's important that the taxpayers play a role in what goes on. If I had to pick one thing that I would look at immediately, I believe that it would be the flowers that are downtown. It's not essential. And I believe that there are other ways that we can handle flowers in the median. I think they're beautiful, but we might have to go to a volunteer-based system, just like we do for the Douglas Roundabout with the tulips.
All right, thank you.
This next question is for Mary. The Lands Committee recently declined to turn the North Franklin Street parking garage into an affordable housing complex. Should the city prioritize fixing Juneau's availability problem with parking or housing? And please explain why.
I'm really sorry, but I have a very difficult time hearing you.
Oh, okay.
I do have a, that is your mic.
I do. It's not working. I'll speak louder.
Yell at me, would you?
The Lands Committee recently declined to turn the North Franklin Street parking garage into an affordable housing complex. Should the city prioritize fixing Juneau's availability problem with parking or housing? And explain why.
Oh my, that's a tough one. We know we want housing, and so when we had a buyer to come to look at that Franklin Street, that looked really great until we realized that they were not going to put in any parking, even for their residents. And so then we took a step back thinking that may not work too well. So we asked our staff to go out and see if they can dig up any parking places in town, even if it's just one here and one there. And that's what they're doing. They're working on that. Probably that building will go up. We would probably approve it, but it would be nice to have them think about some parking other places, since that building is not going to put parking in.
Arnold?
It's not a question of whether we need to be focused on parking or we need to be focused on housing. It's more we need to do both. When parking opportunities come up, we provide parking. When housing opportunities arise, we provide housing. I think the North Franklin lot is an excellent example of an opportunity to provide housing, and we should definitely do it. There are other housing or parking opportunities, but parking is very, very difficult because we seem to be fighting ourselves with this. We create incentives for people to drive their own car all the time. We do this by having free parking for state employees, city employees, federal employees. We provide free parking downtown for 2 hours. And so when you provide an incentive not to drive, it creates a parking problem. So I think we need to address both.
William?
I think it's important they get it so they have, if they're going to make housing, they have to have the parking that goes with it, okay? That way we're not going to be making just a place for housing and no place to park. It's really bad news when you got to go 10 blocks and park your car. That's not fun. So it's very important that they get, I agree with them, that if you're going to make housing, you got to have the parking that goes with it.
Okay, Beth?
At this particular time, I would say the city is already trying to look at the parking problems right now. Actually, the lot next to that North Franklin lot that you were talking about, we're looking at working the state with that. We need to work with mental health to do the parking lot again by the Subport building, and I know they're looking at parking in the Willoughby district. So for that particular question, I would say housing is important first, and I thought the North Franklin building should have been passed on that regard.
Okay. Norton?
Thank you. I believe that both issues are very important to our community, and specifically, housing. And so when I have to weigh these two different priorities, I have to think about, is it more frustrating for somebody to have difficulty finding somewhere to park, or is it more difficult for somebody, or more frustrating for somebody having difficulty finding somewhere to live? And so for me, the choice is very clear that we should be building housing, that people do deserve to have somewhere affordable and nice to live. But I think that we also need to make sure that we continue our focus and raise the priority for parking downtown and really work with the Mental Health Trust to open up that Subport property so we can...
Kate?
Thank you. First, a correction. The question still is before the Assembly. The Assembly has yet to firmly decide this issue. And when it did come before the Lands Committee, I voted in favor of this proposal because I know what a game changer having some downtown housing would be. This particular developer was looking at having studio apartments that would rent out for $700 a month. To have young people moving downtown and have an affordable place to live, that's a game changer for downtown. At the same time, it raised a lot of questions about parking, which I can go into because I wanted to make sure it got addressed. And we are working on that, and I'll come back to parking when I get a chance.
All right, we'll start with Arnold on this one. As there's still a bunch of looming uncertainty, fiscal uncertainty at the state government, Juneau's economy is going to likely take future hits like the one that we got from the governor recently. How would you encourage diversification or growth in our local economy?
I think Juneau has done a very good job over the years in that every passing year we have become more and more diversified. I would like to see more of a push for the independent traveler. I think the cruise ship industry has been very friendly, and we've benefited from that considerably. I'd like to see more independence on the focus on the independent traveler. I think our fishing community is very strong. I think our mining community is very strong. So when I look at the diversification, I think we need to stay focused on that. We need to stay optimistic. The biggest thing we need to do is really keep the middle class working, because statistics shows our middle class population is declining, and that's going to be a real issue.
Thank you. William?
Get it so the cruise ships can come here during the winter and utilize our ski area. We might not have to have the ships as big, but if they can come during the winter, during the holidays, that will help everything. Also, get it so, again, when it comes to having vendors, have 4 times as many vendors. Seniors can start a business without paying any license or permits. That might not seem very much, but at least that gets it so it gets them in the act of starting their own business.
Thank you. Beth?
Well, going again back to the Juneau Economic Development Plan, and I already talked about bringing fisheries research jobs up here. We also need to look at, like Arnold said, independent tourists to come in, or visitors to come in. Independent visitors tend to spend more money than people off a cruise ship, so that would be helpful. We also need to expand the business we have, like the seafood industry. We have to be innovative in what could we do with the salmon byways, for instance, and to help our fishing fleet. Could we use another haul out or stuff like that? The Economic Development Plan also talks about Juneau becoming a performing arts center. We have the Sobeloff building and several other places now.
Thank you. Norton?
Thank you. I believe it goes back to the Juneau Economic Plan, and in the plan it says that the biggest constraint on our local economy is housing, and making sure that we have a plentiful supply of affordable housing. And so that is at the crux. Those two are very connected. Secondly, that'll help to build our local tax base. In addition, we need to work to maintain the state jobs that are here and not lose any more jobs through attrition. Also, we need to work to attract more fisheries research, more Tongass forestry research. We need to look at producing more goods that can be consumed locally. And in a nutshell, that's what I would like to do.
Thank you. Kate?
Thank you. If you look at the private sector, our economy actually is doing slightly good. It's in the 1% range of growth in terms of wages and numbers of jobs. And to have that type of growth with these loss of government jobs shows us that we've been doing a decent job of diversifying our economy, but we definitely have a lot more to do. I've been very involved on the NOAA Fisheries Task Force, trying to highlight Juneau becoming a research center. The Juneau Economic Plan speaks to building the senior economy. I think that's an important aspect for us. There is the arts and cultural hub that we can create. These are all winning strategies we've made progress on, and I would like to continue doing that.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you. One thing I think is important for us to do is keep our capital improvement projects on the books and go ahead and do them. They are projects that we need to do to keep our buildings in good shape, to do all the types of things that people have asked for. It's taken years to get on that list, and it also gives our builders work. So I think we should do that. We should look at our building codes, because so many things do not happen quickly or at all when builders get very discouraged because the building codes take too long to work through. Tourism, fishing, and housing. Housing is important. If we don't have houses here, people won't come here to work.
Thank you.
This next question is to William. The city's economic development plan has identified senior services as a top priority. If elected, what will you do to address the concerns of our growing senior population?
Number one, or reinstate the exemption for the sales tax. Number two would be to get it so seniors can start their own business, because a lot of times being on fixed income, they're in a bind. And if you make it really easy for a senior to be in their own business, they can create sales tax for the city.
Okay, Beth?
The senior exemption, tax exemption that William was referring to, I agree that it needs to be looked at again. Unfortunately, right now, I don't think there's votes on the Assembly to do so. The other thing the Juneau Economic Development Plan talks about is workers for assisted living, that we are short on workers, and that's a problem I know already at the Juneau Pioneers Home. So we need to look at ways to train those folks with vocational programs, either starting in the high school or UAS, or even through Tlingit and Haida. And then the third item is, again, it's just a lack of housing for the seniors to downgrade from a big house into a smaller house.
Okay, Norton?
Hi, Lakidra. Can you please repeat the question?
The city's economic development plan has identified senior services as a top priority. If elected, what will you do to address the concerns of our growing senior population?
Well, thank you. The senior community is growing in Juneau faster than just about anywhere else in the country. And I think we're all pretty aware of that. It's called the Silver Tsunami. It is here. And so something that I'm actively doing right now at this time is I serve on the Juneau Senior Assisted Living Task Force. It's the group that's responsible for building assisted living over here by Safeway in the Vintage Park area. So that's one start. We can also work to improve health care for our senior citizens, tax exemption options for our senior citizens, making sure that Juneau is a senior citizen-friendly community. There are people that have lived here for a very long time and they want to stay here, and we want to keep them here. They contribute $66 million locally to our local economy.
Okay, Kate?
The first thing I think we should do is be engaged in helping that assisted living project happen here in Vintage Park. We have the independent senior housing. Those are important needs that the seniors have. The other needs that they have are things like caravan, and they need their bus discounts. We have about 20 different programs that offer seniors discounts on things. We need to keep those in place. We need to make sure we keep the senior property tax exemption in place and not even go near that. These are all things I think would help. We have out at UAS a home health care program to help get more people into the facilities to work with seniors, and those are good things to be doing.
Okay, Mary?
Thank you. I think the seniors feel a little disenfranchised in our community because they lost the senior sales tax exemption. And I think we need to make it up by making sure they know how valued they are. One of those ways could be to get them into these groups that we need to help us decide what's important for our community. These are really smart people. Met with them just day before yesterday, and we need to really value them and show that value. The property tax from the state should not go away. If they give it back to the cities, we should not do anything in the world about it. And we should make sure that the tax exemptions include toilet paper and paper towels and laundry soap.
Arnold?
So to put some statistics on this, so by the year 2037, the senior population is expected to grow by 120%, while the population between 25 and 64 is expected to decline by 12%. And that's a conundrum, but this can work out. when we look at the services that may be needed, I think we need to increase home and community-based services, and we have to have training for that. There is a plan for the construction of an assisted living home in the Valley, 88-bed, $25 million facility. This would help much. So we can use this, I guess what I'll call the senior economy here, to help grow the working class to provide those services for an aging population.
All right, we'll start with Beth for this next one. Juneau is made up of several ethnically and culturally diverse communities. How will you ensure that these communities are represented in every assembly action?
That's an interesting question. And one of the things we can do is work harder to get more public process within the Assembly and some of the other agencies. Part of my research of becoming an Assembly member, I've sat in a lot of Assembly meetings, and I don't know that people feel that their voice is heard. So throughout all the populations, one of the things I've also done is reached out to them. I've met with the Filipino community, I've met with the Tlingit and Haida Central Council, and just reaching out as Assembly members to all these different groups and find out what their concerns are.
Thank you. Norton?
Thank you, Sam. I think that it is important that we have diversity on our assembly and that we make sure that there are people on there that our voters can relate to. And I think that's the first start. The second thing that we're doing right now is we're broadcasting live via Facebook. And it's a great way for people that have other commitments and can't make it here today to be able to interact with our community and understand what's going on. I've often wondered why our city assembly meetings aren't broadcast live via the web. There's almost no reason that we shouldn't be doing that anymore. I know that I would tune into a lot more meetings if I had that ability to do so. So I think we just really need to connect with the voters. We need to get out there. We need to make ourselves accessible and meet with as many people as possible.
Thank you. Kate?
Can I ask you to repeat the question again?
Yes. Juneau is made up of several ethnically and culturally diverse communities. How will you ensure that these communities are represented in every assembly action?
Well, for me, having a diverse culture is part of who we are in Juneau. It's a part of our fabric. So when I'm at the assembly table, I'm often asking, how does this affect the Filipino community? How does it affect those in our Native community? How does it affect the residents out in the valley? How does it, So I think having people that appreciate diversity and promote diversity, it's an important thing, and that's part of who I am naturally. The other thing we can do is support cultural programs, like the city when we supported funding the Sobolov Center. One of our key economic initiatives is to create a cultural hub here.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you. I think one of the things you asked, what would I do personally? One of the things that I do and that I enjoy doing is I go to the Filipino dinners. I hope you've all been to them. They're just fantastic. And also the Tlingit celebration. I think if we are out in the public as an assembly person, it's just naturally a way that anybody can come and talk to us, not just a particular group of people. We need to make sure we do a good job in informing the public of what's coming up and getting input from some of our leaders in all ethnic groups.
Thank you. Arnold?
I think Juneau is very fortunate. We have a very diverse population, and to a large extent, I think we're doing many things right. And I think we just need to continue doing the things that we continue to do. When there is issues that affect possibly one ethnic group more so than other, generally I hear about it, I read about it, it comes to the assembly. I think we need to keep doing what we're doing. Don't let the assembly off the hook if there is issues that don't get raised, and just keep moving forward as a society.
Thank you. William?
I'm a little bit at a disadvantage when it comes to being not a member on the assembly, but I would think diversity classes and diversification is important, and participation in ethnic events. That would be my priority when it comes to that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, this next question is for Norton. We heard from you earlier about how you'd address senior services. The Assembly voted last year to restrict the city's senior sales tax exemption to essential purchases. This will result in an estimated $1 million increase in sales tax revenue. Do you support this decision? And if not, how would you propose the city make up for that revenue?
Thank you, Lakedra. I strongly oppose the decision that was made to eliminate the senior sales tax exemption. And I've been meeting with a lot of seniors during my campaign. And what I'm hearing is that, we could possibly be facing a bigger hit. A lot of our seniors in our community have turned to Amazon for things that they used to be able to purchase locally. Now they're buying them on Amazon, where it's tax exempt and it gets delivered right to their door. And I see the FedEx truck coming through my neighborhood quite regularly these days. And what I hear from the seniors is that they are more inclined to shop online tax-free. So I would work to reverse that decision.
Okay.
Thank you. I think what people need to realize is that when we were dealing with this question, we were presented with statistics like this that show that Juneau's projected population as it doubles. And then it shows the projected loss of revenue to the city. It goes all the way up to $10 million. So how do we keep the senior sales tax program in place for the long term? We needed to make changes so it would stay around. So we kept 56% of the sales tax in place. 10 years from now, when this senior sales tax exemption is still around and we have a sustainable budget before the city council, it'll be due to 7 assembly members that saw the wherewithal of making these changes and making the tough decisions.
Mary?
I was totally against that happening, and I'm the only one left on the assembly who is still absolutely against getting rid of the senior sales tax exemptions. We were told there was a deficit, but then after a while, and we just cut out $1 million, we were told there was like a $6 million to the good. I think we needed to wait quite a while before we took any action like this. It just makes me very unhappy about it, and I really think that there's no way to make up the $1 million because these are not an unusual class of people who should have to make up something that was for them.
So what would you propose the city cut instead? What would you propose the city cut instead?
I would propose that the city put a deficit of whatever it is into the budget like they do for everything else that we do. This is not, I don't like the fact that seniors are treated as a special class of people. They are special, but a special class of people where you can take things away from them without even, there are lots of things that we lose money on.
Okay.
And we work on getting money back for them through our budget, our budgeting process.
Thank you. Arnold?
So earlier I gave you the statistics of how fast the senior population is growing and contrasting to our younger population. I support this, and I still stand behind it. And I never said this was a senior issue. From the very beginning, I've always said this is a community issue, and sacrifices are going to be made across the spectrum of our entire population. This was a modest change. What it did is it changed it from a privileged program to a needs-based. Now that's what it really should be, needs-based. All the purchases for seniors over the age of 65, 60% of those purchases will still be tax-free for every person over the age of 65. If there is a hardship, you can apply for a rebate of $300. This will help our community by $1 million and will secure our financial future in the end, benefiting seniors.
William?
I definitely support getting the senior citizen exemption back. There's several ways to I'm for adding more money into the budget to cover that $1 million. You can cut out one construction project. There's at least $1 million right there. But I get some fiery responses, when it comes to where I live in the senior citizen facility, and I don't think I can go home without doing something about that, okay?
Thank you. Beth?
I'm in favor of the senior sales tax exemption, and I would, like I said, try to see it repealed. But as I said earlier, that we still don't have the votes for that. Some of the assembly some of the candidates here have said that seniors have kept 56% of their tax exemptions. Well, everybody in this room gets 44%, so realistically, the seniors have only kept 12% of their tax exemption, and I don't agree with that. And they don't cover all the essentials that they should cover. And surprisingly enough, the Juneau Economic Development Commission just did a study, and they found out the median age in Juneau is actually declining again. Are you gonna beat me, guys? Okay.
All right. Well, we'll start with you, Kate, on this one. Juneau has a growing opioid problem. We've heard about what the police department is doing, but what steps should the CBJ take to help people struggling with addiction?
First off, I think we have to continue the dialogue that was started by the group Stop Heroin and Start Talking. It's really raised the community awareness about the seriousness of this problem. From the Assembly standpoint, I think we need to be looking at treatment options. Rainforest recovery isn't working well enough for this. So I'm hoping that as this community conversation continues, there will be some concrete actions to provide better treatment facilities and services here.
All right, Mary?
Thank you. It is a problem, and I believe the police are working on it as best they can. When I've talked to the chief, he feels that it's somehow not growing as much as we thought it might be. So I'm hoping that's true. I think that we need to take steps in all ways to try to contain it, and a treatment center would be very, very good, and we should have that not just for the opium problems, but we have other drugs that are also problems, and this community could use something like a treatment center.
Thank you. Arnold?
I think the community's approach to this has been very positive, and it's something I was really happy to see. I think it takes a community to solve addiction problems, and we need to have the framework and the infrastructure to be able to do that more so than I think we have today. I think it takes a lot of positive peer pressure, and that takes place in our education system, and it starts at a young age. It starts with secure families. It starts with stable families, and it starts with friends, and we just need to keep doing what we're doing. Addiction issues will always exist. We had cocaine in the past. We had OxyContin in the past. Right now it's heroin. In a few years from now, it might be something else, but we need to have the framework to deal with these whenever this comes up.
Thank you. William?
Stop the drugs at the source. Stop the drug smuggling, and get crack down on the dealers. Also, more clean and sober houses, and make it so they are counseled and gradually get it so they can get back to the normal the swing of things in life. And if they after the third time, they're sent off to a federal, not a jail, but federal facility for treatment.
All right. Beth?
First, a shout out to Michelle Stewart Morgan for starting the Stop Heroin, Start Talking. And thank you to anybody who went to the fundraiser this weekend for the Rotary and the Stop Heroin, Start Talking. I think the first place we need to start is education. Education is the key to prevention. I think we did pretty well as a community when the oxy problem was such a prevalent problem in the high schools, and we really went after education and tried to get those kids to stop, and we did fairly well. Unfortunately, heroin is pretty cheap, so we need to stop it at the source, and I know the drug dog is doing pretty well, and maybe we should look at getting another drug dog to help us stop it from coming into town as readily.
Thank you. Norton?
I think that education is the key to working through this problem. When I was growing up down in Cake, Alaska, we had a program called Here's Looking at You 2000. I graduated in 1998. And what was really great about that program, I don't know if anybody remembers that program, but they came in with this big acrylic board. It was like a big cutting board, and in it had every type of drug that you could imagine. I just remember that uppers and downers looked like Dexatrim. I don't know if you guys remember all those little tiny things, but that's what it looked like. And so it really demystified drugs for myself and my classmates. And I think education is key. Get them early, get them while they're young, and educate them as to what these drugs will do to their body. I know that I remember looking at the posters and thinking, gosh, I don't want to look like that. Need to make better decisions.
Thank you.
This next question is to Mary. On paper, the Assembly and its elections you all are participating in are nonpartisan. Do you think political parties have an appropriate role in our local elections? Why or why not?
Who has an appropriate role?
On paper, the Assembly and its elections you are all participating in are nonpartisan. Do you think political parties have an appropriate role in our local elections? Why or why not?
Thank you. I believe that we all run nonpartisan. And I don't know what happens sometimes when issues come up. I don't think we should be partisan. I think we should be nonpartisan. We should be working on the issue and voting the issue, not voting a party. I'm nonpartisan. I don't even know what all the rest of my Assembly members are. But I don't think it has a place in the Assembly.
Arnold?
I'm very disappointed when I look at the federal level and I think about what's happening at our state level and how partisan has so much divided this country and this state. And to think that if we had partisan elections at the local level, what could happen here, I think there's just no room for that. These issues, and this is where the rubber hits the road, it's at the community government level. We can't afford to have nonpartisanship at this level. I'm proud to say I've been registered nonpartisan because I can't get along with either party. I like to be independent. Being independent is where you resolve the issues. We have each other to rely on, the Assembly. We have the city manager. We have the finance officer. That's how we fix things.
William?
Sometimes with the things I want to propose, I end up leaning towards one party nationally. Then you try to be nonpartisan. I even show up to the Democratic picnic and in that. Try to be nonpartisan. But sometimes it comes out, you get asked, what party are you? And I'm not ashamed to tell them, but that's just me. My name has a lot to do with it. Okay, it goes with the territory.
Okay, Beth?
Partisan politics should not be at the Assembly level at all. I believe as Assembly member, we should be reaching out to our citizens and finding out what their concerns are, what their opinions are, instead of answering to a political party. I'm not a member of either party myself, and I think it should remain that way.
Thank you. Norton?
I believe that local city politics should be nonpartisan, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it pretty simple. It should just be nonpartisan.
Kate?
One of the reasons why I decided to re-up again is because it's very rewarding to be part of a functional government process. It actually works here. Our votes go all which way, and that is in part because it's nonpartisan. I sit on an assembly right now where every assembly member looks at each issue based on the merits, issue by issue. That's the way I wanted to continue, and I believe in it, and it's fulfilling, and that's why I've decided to step up again.
Yeah.
All right, start with you on this one, Arnold. In Juneau, a lot of people look to the Assembly to solve problems across the board, problems of all different types. Are there certain issues that you think local government doesn't have any business dealing with? And if so, what are they?
I think the question comes down to defining what is the role of government. And in Juneau, it's a little different, and it seems like that's the case here for many things. So to say there's no areas where we have no business in as a local government, I would say we have a business in developing housing. I think we have to be a voice at the table, but it's also a private sector responsibility to be developing the housing. I can think of things that I would never think of privatizing, such as our water, our sanitation, our education systems. Mm-hmm. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. William?
Making regulations that are duplicate to the state and federal government and sometimes when they have good intentions, but sooner or later there's errors in omissions. Okay, and I've experienced that when it comes to the regulation that takes care of my pedicab. it was intended for taxis and buses, and it gradually, they tried to expand it to pedicab, but
All right, thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, in Juneau, people look to the Assembly to solve a myriad of issues. What issues, if any, do you think the Assembly has no business dealing with?
Surprisingly, when I started running for the Assembly, I've had several questions that people have asked me that the city probably should have nothing to do with. I can't do anything about the permanent fund, folks. I just can't. But in regards to that, I think the city, the Assembly needs to act as a lobbyist a little bit for Juneau, and for some of these issues that we might not delve into too much, that we might have to pass resolutions or stuff like that to advocate for Juneau. But there are several issues federally and state that the city probably shouldn't get into too deeply.
Thank you. Norton?
Well, I think that just about anything that goes on in this community, the Assembly should be involved in or have some sort of influence on, especially when it's brought to our attention as Assembly members. And, there are specific things like hunting and fishing regulations. Of course, we'll leave that up to Fish and Game to handle that. But, when it comes to building matters in our local economy and anything that's taking place in this community, I believe that our Assembly should be involved, and they should have some sort of influence based on what our constituents and our voters want to see.
Thank you. Kate?
I think the city needs to remain focused on its primary functions of providing essential infrastructure, education, parks and recreation, quality of life. What we need to stay away from are those issues that are clearly in the state and the federal camp. We have plenty on our plate as it is, so I would like to keep that focused. I think we have to be wary of trying to incentivize the private sector as opposed to stepping in and doing it for them. Housing is one key example where we need to respect that private line. One thing I would like that we wish we still had was control over our trash.
All right, thank you. Mary?
I wish we did too. There are some things that we really do not have any control over. And the one that comes to my mind is the road out of Juneau, the access road to Katsahine or Skagway or wherever it goes, because it is in the hands of the governor. I mean, we might have opinions, we might even go so far as to tell him our opinions, but we have no decision-making rights. When Senate Bill 91 passed, we didn't have any rights to say, don't pass that and give us back the responsibility of doing the punishment for people who break the law. We didn't have any say about that, but we have to do it now. It's our responsibility.
Great, thank you. We'll get started now with the lightning round. And first up, I believe, is William. We will ask, to repeat the rules, we'll ask each candidate a yes or no question, going in the same order that we have so far. They will have 10 seconds to respond with a yes or no, although I don't think they'll always need the full 10 seconds. So, William, do you support the city's involvement in Peterson Hill?
no. Yes.
All right. Yes. Beth?
I'm not familiar with it, so
I'm not quite sure what you mean by involvement.
The city in Peterson Hill, which is a subdivision, is
Right.
proposed that it will help prep lots,
No.
create ready-to-build lots.
No.
No?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Yes.
Mary? Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this will start with Beth, and then once I say your name, then you can give your answer. Okay, so Beth, do you support the construction of the multi-million-dollar proposed mental health unit by Bartlett Hospital?
Yes.
Okay, Norton?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Mary?
You're a yes. This is the
Yes, I'm a yes.
You voted for it. It's Cameron. It's the Cameron.
You see what I have to put up with on the Assembly.
Teamwork.
I don't know what you said. I'm sorry.
She's been here.
Okay. Do you support the construction of the multi-million-dollar proposed mental health unit by Bartlett Hospital?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
William?
Yes, in spades.
All right. This one will start with Norton. Do you support heavy restrictions or a ban on fireworks usage in Juneau?
No.
Kate?
Depends. I want to look at them.
All right. Mary?
No.
Arnold?
Yes.
William?
Not exempt. I'm for fireworks.
Beth?
I'll have to say what Kate says, it depends on the restrictions.
All right.
Okay, this question goes to Kate. Do you support the Juneau Access Road?
It's a state issue, and right now I'm not inclined to support it, but it's clearly a state issue.
Mary?
Yes.
Arnold?
No.
William?
No.
Beth?
Yes.
Norton?
Yes.
All right. This one will start with Mary. Should Juneau have a second bridge crossing the Gastineau Channel?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Beth?
If we develop the west side of Douglas, yes.
Norton?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Okay, this next question will start with Arnold. Should Juneau police wear body cameras?
No.
Yes.
Beth?
No.
Norton?
Yes.
Kate?
I don't know. I don't know enough.
Okay, Mary?
Yes, if they want them. Otherwise, no.
All right, this question will start with you, William. Do you think the city uses its cruise ship head tax money appropriately?
No.
Beth?
Yes.
Norton?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, this will start with Beth. As it stands, is the Juneau Assembly representative of the community it serves?
Yes.
Norton?
No.
Kate?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Arnold?
That's a loaded one. Yes.
William?
What's the question again?
As it stands, is the Juneau Assembly representative of the community it serves?
Yes.
All right. This concludes the formal portion of our candidate debates. Thank you, candidates, for coming, and thank you, audience members, for coming as well. I'll pass it back to Robert, who will be moderating the audience question and answer portion of the evening, whenever he's ready.
Can we have a round of applause for our candidates? So quickly before we get into this, I want to remind everyone who is here that early voting has actually begun. I want to give you some dates. So early voting is in effect now through October 3rd, and there are two places where you can do it at. You can do it downtown in the Assembly chambers from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can also vote out here in the Valley at the Mendenhall Mall Annex, Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturdays, September 24th and October 1st, from noon to 4 p.m. You can always find this information on juneau.org, and if you navigate to the clerk's website and look for the elections link, it's all there. And then, of course, our official voting day is on October 4th.